Welcome students. In this e-class of BA Part First, English Literature of BNT Government Arts College, Chimanpura, we would take up for study Rabindranath Tagore's famous story, Living or Dead. Living or Dead is prescribed in paper second of your syllabus. This story is a very emotional and it is a very sensitive story about a widow, Kadambini, whose journey from loving, caring aunt to a dead, dreaded ghost because of her illusory death portrays at various levels to the position of women in society and also towards her status and her realization of herself as a woman, as a person, and as an individual. So, this is a sensitive story about love, about betrayal, and it also exposes the social position of a woman, the oppressiveness of a system that considers women as a burden when her husband dies. So, the pathos of Kadambini is very well brought forth in this story, and it questions whether while living she was a living woman or she was leading her life as a person without any existence. Rabindranath Tagore needs no introduction. He was a Bengali poet, writer, composer, philosopher, social reformer, painter, educationist, whose name is associated with the establishment of Vishwabharati Shantiniketan, and he was the first non-European to win the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913. Our concern today is Rabindranath Tagore as a short story writer in literature. His achievement as a short story writer and raising the problem of the masses and raising the emotions and sensitivity in his story is really commendable. His focus was on people, rather humanity at large, and he was expressing through his stories the varied experiences relating to human existence and human life and their day-to-day concern. So he had actually explored the uncharted territories through his stories, whether it was Kabuliwala or Kudita Pashan or Hungry Stones, Chutti, Homecoming, The Postmaster, etc. This concern with human and towards humanity and people in general, his characters are very popular, and through his characters he has raised so many of the social issues through his stories. Women occupy a special place in Rabindranath Tagore's works. His women, within the framework of the familial norms, are placed in situation in society where their position is re-examined and re-questioned through their familial environment. The sensitivity with which Rabindranath he deals with his characters, especially with his women characters, they illustrate the position of women in society of those times. So let us first discuss the story Living or Dead. The main character of living or dead, is Kadambini. She is the protagonist of the story, and she is a widow in Shraddha Shankar's family. She does not have a child and does not even have relatives of her own. So, with no child, she develops a close relationship with her brother in law's son. Both of them, they share deep affection towards each other, like a bond between a mother and a son. There's a twist in the story when one night Kadambini suddenly dies. Because she is a widow, no procession is raised for her. The family calls for four Brahmins who take her to the temple and they wait for her cremation. That very night, while the watchmen they are out smoking and looking for firewood, it is at that time the body of Kadambini it stirs. She awakens. It was an illusory death. She had not died. So she gets up and she walks out of that place. Having come back to life, Kadambini she finds herself in a very strange kind of an environment. Whereas the four men who had taken the body for cremation, they just get frightened and they does not tell about it. They do not tell about it, about the incident to Shraddha Shankar, and just tell them out that she has been cremated. So Kadambini, when she has walked out of that place, she considers thinking of returning back to her home, but then she considers that she is not alive, and she realizes that in this existence of staying between life and death, she considers her existence. In her wandering, she is found by a man who believes, by looking at her, that she belongs to a good family and he wants to help Kadambini. Kadambini again thinks and she just considers that she cannot return back to her house. So she thinks of going back to her childhood friend Yogmaya. She tells the address of Yogmaya to the man. The man agrees, and when Kadambini arrives at Yogmaya's house at an odd hour, she is surprised, but she is very much joyous to look at her childhood friend. Kadambini offers to work as a servant in the house, but Yogmaya refuses and gives her a respectable position. Kadambini stays in Yogmaya's house, and her behavior and her appearance gives Yogmaya a sense of suspicion towards her friend. Kadambini feels like she is dead and cannot enjoy living in her friend's house. Yogmaya, she also gets fed up with Kadambini's presence, and she even at one point of time doubts her husband that why she has not questioned the visitor who had come and who is living with them, means Kadambini, who is living with them in their house. So the husband he takes up a journey to Kadambini's family to find out that why she is living there in their house instead of her family. When he inquires about Kadambini, he comes to know that Kadambini has been dead, and he comes and tells it out to Yogmaya. Yogmaya does not believe it, and late at night, both of them they are quarreling about the matter. Kadambini comes and she confirms that she did indeed die. They just expel her out of her house, and Kadambini, again through a little wandering, comes back to her house. She goes directly to her son-in-law's son, sorry, brother-in-law's son, and her nephew is very glad to see her. She, because of the love, because of the affection that she gets from the son, she feels as if she is living again. At that time, the family comes in and they're all terrified and frightened to look at Kadambini. Kadambini, she tries to convince them that she is alive, she is not dead, but they refuse to believe in her. Finally, she hurts herself, throws her into the well, and dies over there. By dying, she just is able to prove that she was alive and she was not dead. The theme of the story is about a widow who dies suddenly and just a few years later comes back to life. Through this existence between life, life in death, and death in life, Tagore creates a sensitive and an emotional story about love, betrayal, and superstitions. Death proves illusory to the main character Kadambini, whose life itself was without any existence, without any enjoyment, without her individuality. It exposes the selfishness of society and also towards the position of women. The moment a woman's husband dies, she is also declared as means or she is considered as a non-existent person without any life, without any individuality. She becomes a sort of a burden, and people within her family, they start treating her as a worker, as a servant, as a lifeless being. So this ignorance given to Kadambini during her life and even after her death portrays towards many social issues in this story. Tagore represents through Kadambini the consciousness of an individual or the consciousness of a woman for her individuality after her illusory death. She becomes capable of a momentary relaxation, and in this relaxed wanderings, she realizes about her own individuality. In the story, I quote, at this thought, means when she realizes that she is no longer alive, she is considered dead by her family. So at this moment, all the bones were snapped which bound her to the word. So no bonds bound her to the word now. She felt that she had marvelous strength, endless freedom. She could do what she liked, go wherever she pleased. Mad with the inspiration of this new idea, she rushed from the hut like a gust of wind, stood upon the burning ground. All trace of shame or fear had left her. So, all these years she had been bound. She had been bounded in life by shame and fear. Fear of her existence, shameful of her existence as a widow. And once she realizes that she is no longer alive in this world, in these conventions, she feels a freedom within herself. And within this moment, she just think of going to her childhood friend. So her choice of going to her childhood friend's house just seemed as a psychic refusal to accept her inner desire as like a normal human being, as an individual. If we take up the characters of the story, the main character in the story is Kadambini, and surrounding her are the host of characters: Sadashankar Babu, his wife, and his son Satish, with whom Kadambini shares a close bonding. Her friend Jogmaya and the husband of Jogmaya, Shripati, the stranger, the minor characters like stranger who escort her to the house of Yogmaya, and the four Brahmins who had taken her body to be cremated. So all these characters, they just provide the various situations in the development of the plot of the story, and they beautifully illustrate the deplorable position of women in the society during that particular time. So within this limited canvas of a journey of women, Tagore paints a very sensitive and emotional picture about the position of a widow in society. Occupying the liminal space between life and death, Kadambini is confused in life whether she is existent or not. It also points out towards the selfishness and inhuman, insensitive attitude of the family and society towards a widow whose husband has died, and after her husband's death she is considered as not being alive, or is considered as non-existent in society. So this doubt in Kadambini's mind and her heart of being non-existent in society, without any importance, without any respect, constantly haunts her mind and her soul. And the only person all through the story is Satish, her brother-in-law's son, with whom she shares an affectionate bonding, because the child, as an innocent being, he retaliates back the love and affection of Kadambini. So the story poignantly raises the social issues of the position of women in society. The heroines of Rabindranath works are not rebellious, they are not uh, raising the rebellious feminine issues, but within the resistance, within the familiar life, they seem to imply, or they show a mirror towards the ills or the position women face in society because of superstitions, because of irrational customs of the society. So they point towards the deplorable position of women in society and the oppressive condition which hampers the progress of any being, especially women in society. In Tagore's hands, living or dead, it becomes an emotional and sensitive document about a woman who becomes a living dead with no house, no companions, and even while she was living in a house and with a companion, she was a complete stranger without any compassion or without any humanity by the members of the family, and she becomes a sort of a burden, useful only as a servant, and is treated as a lifeless item. Living or Dead is one of the best examples on how social issues can be emphasized without the preaching or without the teachings. The underlying message comes strikingly to the readers while we read the story.